You're listening to episode 93 of Lifestyle Locker Radio with Todd Vande Hei.
All those things that the medical community struggles with, like blood pressure, like obesity, diabetes. Those are jokes. You know this. Like, they are not really problems.
Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Hand, and welcome to the Lifestyle Locker Radio, where we dive into what makes an awesome lifestyle. From relationships to money mindset, nutrition to fitness, emotional health to peak performance, we bring you on an amazing journey to unleashing your human potential. And we wanted to let you know that this show is brought to you by the Lifestyle Locker 45-Day Endurance Challenge. If you're a runner that wants to run more distance, make sure you do check out the Lifestyle Locker Endurance Challenge, and details will be in the show notes. So I want to tell you a little bit about our guest today, Todd Vande Hei. This guy is the real, true-life Ironman. Well, not really. He has a company called Stark. He's a president and CEO and co-founder of Stark, which is in Irvine, California. He's a national leader in weight loss and sports performance for high achievers. And Stark provides a wide range of treatments and fitness services utilizing science, technology, and naturopathic medicine to help clients reach their goals. Prior to Stark, he was the president of a public manufacturing company called Fabrica, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Dixie Group, where he spent the majority of his career. Fabrica designs, manufactures, distributes, and imports and exports carpet and rugs in Santa Ana, California. And the Dixie Group is based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Todd is also an avid kite surfer and hunter because of his exceptional nutrition it provides, assuming, of course, that he's really successful. This is important to know. You know, it's kind of funny we talk about, his past, you're going to hear in this story, but it's like, okay, this guy's like, the president of a fabric company, and now he is like Ironman. He's taken over being the president of a company to become the president of his health and his life. So let's dive into this episode. You're going to have a blast, and here he is. Hey everyone, we've got a really interesting guest today, which I know you're going to absolutely love. We've got Todd in the locker room. Todd is a really interesting guy. I almost wanted to call him the real life Iron Man here. He runs a company called Stark, which we're going to kind of dive into him and the why behind he created this amazing company, this amazing organization. So Todd, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here with you.
So you have a really interesting story. When I got to chat with you on the phone last week, I thought initially you were a chiropractor, and I was way off. You're this really cool businessman that got
just a white guy from the Midwest, living in California.
Exactly. So I'm gonna steal your quote off your website right now. It says, "I'm just a middle-aged dude living in California, from the Midwest via New Jersey, in a never-ending scientific experiment to redefine what's possible with my body." And I'm sure you got more out of it than just your body. I'm sure there's a huge mind space shift along with it too, right? So
absolutely there is, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us your story of, I don't know if it necessarily starts in New Jersey, but tell us where you started, like where this evolution of you came from.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, there's a little bit of a family dynamic, I think, to begin with, and so we can actually start in New Jersey. And I was 14, by the way, when my family moved to the Midwest, to Minnesota. But for whatever reason, my mother in particular was hyper focused on health when we were young, and constantly kind of pushing the envelope. This is in the 70s, and so in the 70s, health looked like don't smoke. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everybody was smoking, and she was like on the cutting edge of that. Like, we were going to stop smoking. Both my parents were smokers. We're going to stop smoking. My dad actually smoked a pipe, which is kind of funny. And my mom had cigarettes with like the cigarette holders and all sorts of fancy stuff. And anyway, they quit in the 70s, and we were packed. My brother and I and my sister at the time were given lunches to go to grade school with whole wheat bread.
Ooh,
instead of white Wonder Bread, and that was like considered to be healthy at that particular time. So it was something that was somewhat ingrained in all of us, I think. And strangely enough, there's 4 of us in total, My older brother, who's just a year and a half older than me, is an astronaut.
Oh, wow.
My sister, that's a few years younger than me, is a dietitian. And my baby sister, who's 10 years younger, is a yoga teacher and has a handful of studios in Southern California.
Wow. So you
And so
guys
we
all,
all kind of eventually went down that path. I didn't for most of my career and had really no intentions of going down the road of being in the health and fitness business, but I ended up there nonetheless. Much of it kind of started out. I mean, I had a lot of health related issues, and I think that did make me kind of unique in terms of my siblings, who really didn't have the same kind of challenges, and some of them were sort of like imposed. I imposed on myself through lifestyle related stuff that came later on in life via stress. But I I remember coming home from grade school most days of the week, and I'd actually had a couple of paper routes when I decided I liked money. Instead of just getting one, I got another one, and I would come home most days after school with a headache, a fairly severe headache, and I would muscle through the responsibility of delivering the papers in the afternoon. I don't know why papers were delivered in the afternoon in New Jersey at that particular time, but they were. And then I'd get home afterwards, and before I had football practice or baseball practice or I played basketball, I'd have to take a nap and sleep that headache off. And that was a fairly regular occurrence.
And how old was this?
I was maybe 12.
Wow.
That's as far back as I can recall having regular headaches. It was a part of my life. It was a normal part of my life. And that lasted all the way up until I was probably 43, which is when we started Stark. Yeah.
I'll say, talk about suffering. That's a lot.
It was suffering, but again, it was normal.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have any basis for comparison. And then I had a severe back injury while working out in the gym in college, where I was hauled away. I injured a disc in my low back. Hauled away in an ambulance. Was laid up for a week. Was told I would likely have a reoccurrence. Like there's a 90% chance during the first year or something like that. Those are the statistics back then. And went through physical therapy. So went through some work with a therapist. But never really, dealt with the underlying issues associated with it. So I always had back pain from that point forward. Had created, shoulder instability by, doing too many curls for the girls, too much bench press, and not trying to balance those things out. Again, now we're in the 80s.
Yeah,
and
bodybuilding,
I was doing
right?
my workouts from Muscle and Fitness magazine.
Yeah.
In my early 30s, as I started getting into the corporate world, I keeled over I think I was maybe 31 or 32, keeled over on a golf course in Austin, Texas, and had a cluster of grand mal seizures.
Holy cow.
That it turned out to be, idiosyncratic, which is, for those of you that don't know, those of your listeners that don't know what that is, it means nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows why it happened, but went through a series of cardiac tests, brain scans. They were looking for tumors. At first, they were doing blood tests to see if I was, coked up.
Yeah,
which
sure.
I guess is kind of the common thing to cause a random seizure like that. Thankfully, it came out squeaky clean, but never really got to the root cause of those seizures. Then developed an arrhythmia, an AFib arrhythmia. Which I had noticed in my mid-20s as kind of like an irregular heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if it was an AFib at that point, but eventually developed into that. Oh, and there's probably a handful of other random things in there that just sort of build up over time. And I don't think I was very unique either. In the corporate world, being in my early to mid-30s, moved into that final role at the manufacturing company that's in my bio, where I was running a public company called Fabrica, in carpet manufacturing, and I was the young healthy guy, even though I was really starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
It was just that my peers were 40, 50, 60, and 70, and they were drinkers, they were smokers, they never exercised, and that was part of my lifestyle, even though I think I was doing it completely. There's no strategy employed whatsoever. And it was just sort of like random cardio at a hotel in New York at 11 o'clock at night because I got in late. But I was attempting to inject that into my lifestyle, knowing that it was a box I was supposed to check. But there was no attention to measuring anything that was quantifiable whatsoever.
Yeah, that's really crazy. You know, it's and I see it today as a practicing chiropractor as well. Just that the corporate life. I mean, people are becoming a little more active now, but it's like if I know someone's a banker or an X, like we can expect not. I mean, I hate to assume, but we can expect these like 10 things that go on in their spine and in their organs and then like all of these different things, and it's crazy.
There's definitely a shift. You're younger than me, obviously.
Yeah.
Your people.
My people.
There's a difference in.
I'm only about
difference.
12 years younger and 11 years younger
That's
than
a big difference. I mean, you're a like an old millennial, right?
No, I'm an Xer.
You're an Xer. Okay, so I'm
almost 40. Yeah.
Okay, so the younger generations are better educated and have more of an appreciation for the benefits associated with health. They feel like they're more in the driver's seat, and they're actually more skeptical. They're more educated. They have internet. They've had it their entire lives. Right?
the Google.
About something. If they have they can enter it into the Google machine and end up with some good answers and tremendous education through YouTube and blogs and other social media platforms. And so, because of that, I think that they're more educated, and that there's also a cultural shift in how they like to spend their money. They would rather drive a less expensive car and have 2 or 3 health club memberships, maybe yoga, maybe Pilates, maybe something else that's about CrossFit or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of an interesting thing to see things moving in that direction because it was completely the opposite. I was a standout, even though I was a total disaster from a health standpoint. But I've also had high blood pressure at that time. What happened? Unfortunately, so I was running a public company. I got fired, which isn't that uncommon for the president or the CEO of a public company to get dismissed because of it's sort of a short-term outlook in terms of financial targets being reached. And in my case, I had a disagreement with the board of directors on the direction they wanted to take the company, and if I had stayed, and I really didn't believe it was going to succeed, it probably wouldn't have succeeded just because of my opinion. And my name definitely would be on it because it's public. And so you kind of have to, I didn't really have much of a choice, I felt. I gave my wife the presentation I was going to do to the board the night before. I gave her the presentation the night before. And her response was, "You're going to get fired." And I'm like, I think I have like a 5% chance at surviving this, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure. So I kind of knew going in it was going to be maybe falling on the sword. Maybe there was a chance that I would survive it. But I didn't care to be a part of it the way the future of the company was going to look. So I gave this presentation. It was like 45 minutes long, and it's just like right out of a movie. I mean, this long boardroom with a whole bunch of old white guys around the table.
Yeah.
And I had 3 or 4. I had a CFO there, our VP of operations, our VP of marketing, and then me from the entity for which I was responsible. And I remember seeing all the way across the table was a guy named Wayne Hedger. He was our VP of operations, an engineer. Loved the guy, got to know him really well over the years. And he was totally bald though. And his head was down like this. And for those of you who aren't watching, that means I pointed my face to the floor. And I could see across the table the shimmering light off of the beads of sweat that were finding their way down to the table from the top of his head.
Wow.
Like they were running down the top of his head. I'm like, oh man, this is probably going worse than I thought it was going to go. And I didn't think it was going to go very well.
And it was air conditioned real well, I'm sure, at the same time.
Yeah. So it was a very stressful thing. And my boss to the right of me, really nice older gentleman from the South, was he was the CEO of the parent company, and almost looked like he had these gigantic earlobes and nose. And I almost looked like his earlobes were vibrating, and they were bright red, and so was his nose. And I could tell he was a little miffed at the presentation, which was pretty targeted at him and his corporate staff, frankly. So if, in retrospect, maybe I would have sanded down the edges at my age now, but I wouldn't have changed the message in general. So anyway, I was dismissed, and we were fortunate enough for me just not to have to go back to work. So I came home with my box of stuff, with just like in the movies again, with pictures of the kids sticking out the top, and knickknacks and things that I had in my office. Walking down the hallway, and people were like, waving goodbye to me, and the IT guy gave me a hug and then grabbed my laptop from me.
You
It was
can't have
it was
that
a
one.
really, yeah, it was a kind of a sad thing, and then I just went home and with my box of stuff, and I said, honey, I got fired, and that's it. I guess this is the beginning of a next phase. She was pregnant with our third
Oh wow.
at the
Okay.
time, so it was right before Christmas, so it was a good timing from like a take some time off standpoint, and so I retired. That was it for, I thought it was forever, and proceeded to manage our real estate portfolio, which I'd started building up actually in Chicago in the Midwest. And um, in 2000, between 2008 and 2010, had accomplished losing everything.
Oh wow.
Uh, and it was just absolutely devastating. It was um, my identity was tied into that success, and so it was like that was getting ripped away from me. And also business was at the beginning stages of really changing in terms of how you market a product or a service.
Okay.
MySpace was about to fall apart. Facebook was
Yeah,
brand
I
new.
do remember that very
Was
well
further,
actually.
I wasn't really paying attention to those things yet. Didn't seem to make sense to me. I remember I had a buddy from high school who said, "Hey, you need to join Facebook. It's so funny. We're looking at all these old pictures from high school with all of our buddies," and that's why I created a Facebook account. So that all happened, and I was putting my resume together for the first time in my life, and then an ex personal trainer of mine, great guy named Brad Davidson, reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to help him turn his business around, and because it was falling apart, like almost every business in Southern California was, except for the businesses that flourish in times of
Hmm.
great desperation. And so his was falling apart. I jokingly said I'd clear my calendar and I'll come to see him tomorrow. And I went and visited him, and I felt as though I could do anything in business, and I had like the golden touch or
Hmm.
something, which I was completely wrong about. And so told him I would help him turn it around, but then when I get a job, it was over, and I'd have to go to New York or Georgia, relocate
Hmm.
somewhere. Fell in love with what he did, and talked to my wife about getting rid of everything and getting as small as we possibly could financially, and try to make that our life. And I also was afraid of going back to traveling all the time and being away from the family, and the challenges that posed to a marriage as well. I mean, it was really stressful to
Yeah, I can imagine.
have such a massive lifestyle change. And my wife went back to work for the first time in like 12 years. It was a rough situation all around. We had $60,000 left. To start Stark, I needed 42 of that, and I had no income. Um, and I needed to borrow another 30 from a couple of friends at 20%. And
Wow.
that's how it happened.
Wow.
And so Brad had a personal training business, and it was in the wrong location, and he was focused on young athletes, and I was experiencing the benefits of it for myself at 42 or 43, and was like, hey, this is amazing for me. It'll be amazing for other business people. I think that's really where we should
Hmm.
be heading, and we can still train young athletes and some periodic pros here and there, but it was really more like good for morale. It wasn't really a good revenue stream,
Yeah.
at least not for us. That's a difficult business. I don't like it as a business person. Meaning they come and like the pros. A pro football player will spend a month with us, or at the outside 8 weeks in the off season, and then 4 weeks in June, and that's all. That's the only time we see them. So
Okay.
it's just not, it's not business I really wanted to be in. And so we started Stark, which is German for strong.
Okay.
Um, in my sales and marketing background, I wanted to create a story around the name, and so we began searching for ideas around what made sense based on the type of training that we did, and at that particular point in the company's history, which is right at the beginning, Brad was very deeply steeped in Charles Poliquin's training modules. You familiar with Charles Poliquin at all?
I
No.
am not.
He's,
No.
he's sort of like uh, in certain circles, a pretty well-known strength coach from
Okay.
Canada,
Okay.
and had a pretty successful at that point. It's I think no longer there. Had a pretty successful business of providing advanced certifications to strength coaches around the U.S. and Europe and Australia. And so many of the protocols that he was teaching Brad to employ in our business, they originated in Eastern Bloc countries.
Okay. Strong
Russia,
people.
Hungary, yeah. And so I thought, well, let's take that concept and let's look for words that make sense in those languages. And they all just sounded like crap. And then we got to German and we came across Stark. I'm like, well, that's pretty
Well,
good. The funny thing is being in the carpet business, I told them the only issue I think we have is there's a great carpet business called Stark. You see it in every architectural digest. There's ads all over the place.
okay.
In New York, but they're in New York. And we're like, okay, that's fine. We hop in the car. We're driving up the 405, which is a major freeway in Southern California. And there's Stark on the side of the road. After we got our DBA all set up with the county, they opened up like a discount location in Southern
Right.
California. But anyway, we moved forward with it. Different business, different industry altogether. So there's no issues there. And that's kind of how that's why the company existed at that point. But we evolved as a result of many of the problems that I faced and Brad's interest in functional medicine. Those are like the two key characteristics of why we started going down the road we started going down. And so as he would write plans for nutrition and supplementation, and I started to experience the lifelong somewhat disease states that I was experiencing, like headaches. Those things just like faded away. Any of the joint pain, headaches, arrhythmia. I mean, all those things are under control as a result of just becoming really, really healthy. And the body composition things, like if you look at my Instagram account, you'll see a bunch of fitness industry looking selfies.
Yeah.
Hopefully you read the captions because I'm not trying to be super cheesy. I'm actually trying to share information. In some cases, raise money for charities, but I'm trying to share information that our team is really putting together. So I'm not claiming to be the expert in those areas, but experientially, that's my part of the story.
Well,
like
you're the result of that awesome story.
I am the result in our other. We call our clients students. So if I throw that out, I don't want to be confusing to people, but myself definitely, and as well, all the students that kind of come behind me are experiencing the same thing, because our student base is made up of primarily men and women that are very successful business owners that range from like 35 to 60-ish.
Okay.
We have some on the outside of that, but that's the vast majority of our students. And so they all kind of experience the same things because they've done the same things to their bodies. They've they spent half of a lifetime sitting behind a steering wheel or in an airplane or at a desk, and you're a chiropractor, all the biomechanical issues that those things cause, like your ass stops working, like that, and you end up with these super tight pec minors. Is that
everything?
Everything's going. You've got forward head carriage, and all the pain that different symptoms may be experienced by different people, but they kind of come from the same issues, which is to say that we're super sedentary.
Yeah. And it's starting now at forget business.
Yeah.
That's school. That starts.
Yeah.
We're teaching this shit at school, and it's following its way through, into the industry.
Yeah. And so that's our challenge as an organization, is to take a sledgehammer to that when people don't even know that some of those things are even a thing. They're not even a problem. They just think it's normal. Kind of like I believe my headaches were normal. I mean, I used to take ibuprofen almost every night after having a glass or two of wine to kind of wind down at the end of the day, to make sure I didn't wake up the next day with a headache. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when I started having an allergic reaction to ibuprofen, my eye would swell up. This is bizarre. I switched to Tylenol.
Oh,
and I did that for a decade, which shows up in my labs.
I'll say your liver wasn't happy.
My liver wasn't happy. My liver enzymes are constantly a challenge.
Yeah.
And I've done genetic testing. I don't have issues. Much of what I experienced is all self-imposed by the normal standard American diet and the
lifestyle.
Yeah. And so many of your business people, listeners, and probably others as well, can relate to this. You get home from a long day at work, you have a couple of glasses of wine, You go to bed, you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you pee, maybe you wake up again at 5 and you can't go back to sleep because you've got too many things in your mind because you're checking your email up
Yeah.
until 10 p.m.
Yeah.
from on your pillow, like you've got your head in your pillow and you're looking down at your laptop as you're checking and something is disturbing and you can't fall asleep that night very quickly because of that. But you've got all the cognitive ramping up or cognitive activity that's kind of ramps up as a result of doing
Yeah.
that. And so your sleep is never really that great. And you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I feel like shit. And so then you have a cup of coffee, maybe a mocha. So you got a shitload of sugar and
Yeah.
fat. Get that whole bomb and you take that in and you don't need any protein with it, but you drive to work with your mocha. And then you get there and by 10 o'clock you need another because you're tired from all this sugar and stuff.
Yeah.
And and then you have a shit lunch and you're fading away in the afternoon. So you have a Diet Coke and then you're fading away by the time you get home. And then you get, you got kids running around. You're like, holy shit, you're stressed. And you have a glass of wine to relax. And it's like this cycle goes around and
Yeah.
around and around. And that, doing that every day for decades is what I experienced. And if you're casting a wide net on your labs, you can see it popping up all over the freaking place. There's a bunch of red flags everywhere. But the great thing is that you can reverse this stuff. It just takes time and some diligence.
Some
And
hard
I'm
work,
living
man. Yeah.
it's hard work. But I mean, it starts out as hard work, but really, people say that to me, and it kind of bugs me a little bit. It's just it's a change in how you approach
Yeah.
the way you live.
Totally.
Like, it's not odd for me to grill at 5 o'clock in the morning my breakfast, and it's fairly efficient for me. Like I can throw some organic turkey burger patties on the grill and walk away. And because I've done it so much, I know exactly when to walk back after maybe I take a shower, and take them off the grill. And
Funny.
it takes me about maybe 2 or 3 minutes longer than putting together a bowl of cereal
Oh,
for
yeah.
me because it's a habit for me now.
Yeah.
The bottom line is we all have to eat.
Yes.
It makes it harder to eat out, but you can still easily do that. At least in California, you can easily find good solutions.
Yeah. Oh,
In
yeah.
some cities, it's
Definitely.
harder. But in California, you certainly can. You've got no freaking excuses. I mean, you've got everything around us is organic. There's all sorts of, like oat milk is all over the place, and everything's gluten free, and it's not that it really isn't that hard. You just have to start. You have to put some effort into changing your mindset and being diligent, like reading labels. Stuff like
Yeah.
that starts to become important. But, after doing it for like 3, 6, 9 months, it becomes a normal part of your lifestyle, and I don't even think about it anymore, really.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a
so
cool thing.
yeah, yeah. So at Stark, we have we had success with, let's say, 40% of our clientele, our students, with just training, with just exercise,
Mhm.
which was the original and primary focus of the business. And then we were like, well, how do we get better? Well, we need to incorporate nutrition, and we got a little higher percentage
Mhm.
success rate. And then we incorporated supplements. We got a little higher success rate. We're using calipers, and not the greatest way to measure success, but they were all attempting to quantify and find solutions
Yeah.
relative to data. The data was just all kind of funky, and not very accurate. Um, but people would limp in then and be like, "Hey, I want to lose weight with exercise." I mean, they wouldn't use those
Mhm.
words exactly, but that was the idea. And we'd be like, "Well, dude, exercise is moving. You can't even walk. Like,
Yeah.
how are we going to help you lose weight with exercise if you can't even walk?" Um, and so we incorporated chiropractic care into our system. So when new students come in, they get an orthopedic assessment, and we really understand the issues around how they move, both for orthopedic health and for fitness related outcomes as well. But the last stage in our evolution was to incorporate labs into virtually every single student that walks in the door, so that we understand what the underlying issues are, and we can start dealing with those. And sometimes they're 20 years out.
Yeah.
Like I'm concerned about, at my age, I'm concerned about cognitive health, and I'm concerned about having a cardiovascular event. And I don't think it's going to happen today, but what I'm doing today is going to have an influence over what my 70s and 80s look like for sure, and definitely my 90s and 100. right? I'm going to
Yeah,
make it
without a
200.
doubt. No, that's a definite reality. I mean, that's like the fastest growing population in the world right now are centenarians.
Yeah, so I am going to, I've not heard that statistic. That's
Yeah.
interesting. But so we want to know what it's almost like compounding interest as a 20-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can invest, you hear from the insurance guy, you can invest $50 a month in this insurance policy. By the time you retire at 65, it's going to be worth, $922,000 or something like that. And that's just because making those slight adjustments to your financial focus when you're young enough and you have all these years ahead of you will have a massive impact on where you end up. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing at any age, really. It just swings less wildly the older you get.
Yeah.
But so for me today, that's really what I'm focused on. I just want to be as healthy as possible. I want to be able to manage. I want to be able to be whatever I want to be physically. Like if I want to jump higher, I want to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have limitations around it. I want to play beach volleyball. I want to make sure my shoulders are really healthy. Whatever I'm interested in, I want to have the ability to do it. And that means that I just have to be super healthy. And so that's the entire focus of the business. And that's been my experience. All of those things that the medical community struggles with, like blood pressure, like obesity, diabetes. That's like those are jokes. Like you know this.
Yeah.
Like they are not really
Mm-hmm.
problems.
Yeah. No,
They're
I mean
not at
they're
all. They can
lifestyle
be
induced
so
problems.
so easily fixed.
Yeah.
Anything that's chronic that is also devastating is really not a big problem. But you see documentaries about it. There's this big conspiracy in the food industry. I mean, whatever the documentaries are about, you listen to cardiologists talk about the challenges that they face. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
It's not
No,
that hard.
lifestyle is a leading cause of health and a leading cause of disease at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is. So I want to circle back real quick to that point in your life when when your health is really falling apart. You're in your 30s. Because this is common. I mean, this is so common in this country. But how was it? I know it was affecting your health, but how was it affecting life? I mean, I don't mean just like your business, but how is it affecting, like, you have a family? I mean, like, you're the man of the household. Was it affecting your kids? I mean, I want people to get like the real picture. How it can possibly impact them too?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. Well, first of all, the ultimate impact it could have had on me is death.
Yes, which would affect everybody.
I don't know that I'd be around today, frankly. I attribute Brad. Brad really, I think, saved my life. I helped save his business. He saved my life by exposing me to these concepts that I really didn't know existed.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been the worst outcome. But I was just exhausted, and so I'd come home and wouldn't want to play with the kids. When they were 2, 3, 4. I mean, that's kind of devastating. That's sad. I didn't have the same kind of sex drive that I probably should have had when I was in my early mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And that can impact, your relationship with your spouse. At work, if I was battling a headache, the day was wrecked. I couldn't accomplish anything really, because sometimes they would turn into migraines. And if I was traveling a lot, so I'd be in Houston, Texas, I'd be like, hey, you got to take me back to the hotel. Day's over, 2 p.m.
Wow. Okay.
And so you can imagine, again, because of my age, in my early 30s, in that kind of a role, or even in my 20s, I told you I started when I was 12. I was not as good. I was not as good a paper boy as I otherwise could have been.
Yeah.
Totally. If I didn't have to deal with those headaches on a regular basis, or the best football player, or the best student, I was constantly discounted or held back by the pain that I was dealing with on a regular basis. So everything was affected. Relationships and performance, and body composition. Like you can't. A lot of people are concerned a lot with how they look, particularly in Southern California. Like you can't really look great, at least long term, and feel like shit all the time. You can't. You can tag it, like you see fitness models who or competitors get really really lean, and then they fall apart afterwards because their hormones can't recover. And then they blow up, and it's over for them, and they can't figure out how to get back. So they just start working out more and more and more, and they continue to drive their hormones into the tank. It gets worse and worse and worse. They've got no sex hormones left, and they're heavier than ever, and they're working out more than ever, and they feel like crap about themselves, and they physically are fatigued. That's kind of like the outcome
Yeah.
of that. So yeah, it had an impact on everything.
Yeah. And I think that's
There's no
just,
escaping your body. I mean,
yeah. Well, I think that's important because I mean, when I looked at like looking at you and after just this conversation alone, and I'm looking at the website in front of me too, looking at Stark. It's like, listen, you're saving people's lives, not
mhm.
just their fitness. I mean, like you may be saving a relationship, you may be saving,
Yeah.
maybe giving, kids their mom or their dad back, type
Yeah.
of thing. And it's such a big uh, responsibility, but it's such a powerful thing because you get to have this direct response. Like you show someone, hey, listen, this is what it takes to take care
Right.
of yourself. This is how we shift your lifestyle. And
Hmm.
then they gain not just their fitness back and their physique back and all these awesome things, which I don't know people that wouldn't want that, but like
Hmm.
the side part of it is made their business be better, and I think that's really huge, a
Yeah,
huge takeaway for people.
I agree.
Yeah. So what's next? Is Stark? You guys are one location.
Yeah, so we're at one location. We're at capacity. We're expanding to our second, hopefully by January 1st. So we're negotiating on a few different properties in the Newport Beach area, which, for those of you that aren't aware or aren't familiar with Orange County, it's the wealthiest part of a very, very wealthy county. And unfortunately, what we deliver is just really, really expensive. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have to go into those markets that are that can support that kind of monthly layout, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's about the same as what they're paying for their auto lease or to clean their house on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
So for our students, it's not a big stretch, but for the general pop, it's obscene.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
sure. I'm
so,
sure. I mean, just
so yeah, the plan is to expand to the second, and then shortly thereafter the third. We're developing our own software, which will support the growth project, and then we'll recapitalize after the third location's up and running, and then we'll expand to 30 over time.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
the
to spread this message of just kind of over whole body
yeah.
health, right?
Yeah, and what's really unique about the organization, I told you before we started recording that I didn't want to necessarily focus on the business, but this is a really interesting concept, and I hope other organizations pop up around the country that deliver this. But in a business, it's very normal for when there's something that is going to be created that may have some risk associated with it. Like in Fabrica's instance, it was a product rollout, and in some cases, those products cost a couple $1 million to roll out, so it was risky. Um, and what I did was I had our CFO and our VP of operations and our VP of marketing and me, sit in a room and review a product introduction, and um, if it wasn't profitable, the CFO would call it out, like, "Hey, you're not doing your costing right." If it wasn't manufacturable, because the original samples were created in a lab, that engineer Wayne Hedger would be like, "I can't make that in the factory.
Mm-hmm.
You're out of your mind. Like, we'll have 50% claims. It'll destroy the brand." And I had simply a sales perspective, and the guy that created the actual products had a creative perspective. But all of our jobs were to increase shareholder value, improve shareholder value. So the position was the same. It's almost like you as a chiropractor and the GP down the street and the nutritionist and the personal trainer, you all think of yourselves as delivering the same outcome, which is better health. But you have completely different lenses. And what I was frustrated about in health and fitness in general is that all of those specialists or practitioners, whatever you want to call them, were operating in silos and not only refused to work with other people with different licenses, but didn't like each other. We're competing for the credibility of the consumer rather than collaborating and having those like the people I described at Fabrica. It was a sweaty armpit, uncomfortable, full of conflict conversations, but the outcome was a lot of exceptional collaboration and better products.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our bodies are so much more complex than a freaking piece of carpet, and the risk is so much more. It's so much higher than rolling out a bad carpet product.
Yeah.
It's all we have is our health, really.
Hmm.
Um, Without it, everything else is gone. And so I decided then, well, I'm going to create that at Stark. I'm going to have these specialists that will be fully integrated, meaning they actually work together, not like passing the baton and now my job's over, but really communicate with each other and fight on behalf of the student at Stark. And and so it seemed really simple at the time, but when I started doing it and brought in the wrong doctors and the wrong coaches, and I'm like, oh, this is way harder because they're generally come into the working environment with with the thought of being independent
Yeah.
and controlling the relationships. And so they're not trained to work in teams. And so I had to
Hmm.
find the right people for that to work. And finally, 5 years later, identified them. And the result is really an exceptional experience where you get faster professional development because of the constant conflict, and you get better quality outcomes for the students that would otherwise not exist because of that collaboration. So that's really this kind of like the special sauce,
Yeah. Of
and I'd
course.
love to see more of that around the country, but it just really doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it's kind of a really neat concept, and I think I mean I think it's something that's probably been in thoughts of lots of people's heads, but a lot of people haven't been
Uh-huh.
able to even like you've put it together. You've been able to
Yeah.
put the puzzle together. But I see with our practice, our patients as well as talking to them about fitness and nutrition. It's a lot of times, at least in our world, we get to see like it becomes a very one-sided. Like they just want like, okay, you're the
Hmm.
chiropractor, but you know what? I think if I feel good, I don't need to worry about the nutrition. I don't need to worry about like
Right.
you're missing the big picture. It's about you. It's
Right.
about being a human.
Hmm.
If we're working with the nervous system and the spine, you need to start to do things that are better. You can't eat McDonald's every day and expect to have this healthy body.
Right.
You know, um, but that's neat. So, how can people connect with you? I know, connection via Instagram. You have a really awesome feed. Obviously, the website, right? Starklife dot was it .us? Is it?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And
Yeah,
where else can people
so
find you?
our website will if you go to our website and you click on blogs, you'll have access to any of our written material as well as our podcast. That's posted there. You can find otherwise our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. Um, it's also available through the Echo with AnyPod and the Stitcher skill on the Echo, so you can listen to it at home that way if you want, or in your office. Um, my my Instagram handle is testosterone. Um,
Oh, well, don't worry. We'll put,
used
we'll
to
put
be,
links in there.
yeah, used to be a joke, when my testosterone was low.
Okay.
It started out with Testy Todd and then ended up with testosterone. Um, and my LinkedIn account, Todd Vande Hei, you can find me there, and that's pretty much, best way to get through.
Well,
Yeah,
cool. Well, great, Todd. This has been an awesome conversation. I was really glad to be able to connect with you and be able to share this message because uh, there are people that need to hear it. I think everybody needs to hear it, frankly. So thank you.
my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Locker Nation, I hope you liked our real life Ironman Todd, right? I was going to call him Tony Stark, but no, Todd, who runs Stark. This guy is so great, going from like, man, pain to purpose. I mean, he's running from a fabric company and destroying his health to creating and revamping and becoming the CEO of his own health and his life. This guy has done some amazing work with himself, and he does the same with his clients. He practices what he preaches. So when you follow him on Instagram, you will see exactly what he's doing. He shares lots of great content. Make sure you do connect with him. If you're in SoCal and you want to connect with him, you want to become a client, I'm sure there's a process. There's no doubt in my mind. This is not just an over the night or fly by night type of gym. This is like a legitimate wellness type of place where you have to be probably accepted, apply and be accepted. So connect with Todd. His details will be there. And make sure if you did like this episode, share it with someone. And lastly, make sure you give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That would be awesome because what that does, that helps bump up our show and shares it with more people. And if you do like it even again, let me know. Send me a private message on Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Josh Han, or like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/lifestyle locker. And until next time, Locker Nation, Have an awesome day. Peace out.